Hi, I'm David Manti with Cannabis Equipment News, and with me today is Phil Gibson, the Vice President of Marketing with AEssenseGrows. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, David. Appreciate the time today.
Awesome. Well, let's get started by talking a little bit about AEssenseGrows. I met with the company about 2 years ago. I just wanted to see what's happened in the last 2 years and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, AEssenseGrows is a precision agriculture company. We make advanced sensor-based aeroponic grow equipment and the sophisticated software that helps it operate and allows you to manage it remotely or very directly, very precision-driven. Exciting thing about it is it allows you to have a very advanced grow, know exactly what it's going to do, be very predictable, very repeatable, and be very flexible. So if you want to grow something different, you just load a different recipe and you're operating and growing something very different very quickly. So really from a market standpoint, that allows a cultivator to keep an eye on their local market. What can they get the premium price for? What's the market demanding? And then shift immediately to that kind of a crop and deliver it in basically the gestation time for that grow. And it's a little more expensive because you're investing in capital equipment and software than growing in soil. But the yields tend to be 30-40% higher. The labor is probably 1/3 the labor you'd have otherwise. The usage of water and nutrients is about 5 to 10% of what you'd have growing in a field crop. So it's a lot of advantages that balance the investment. But it tends to drive people to the premium value plant. And today, the premium value plant in North America is cannabis. And so while we started as a fresh produce company, growing fresh produce in China for the city of Shanghai, as we introduced things here in North America, we had a lot of customers that pulled us in to the cannabis business. And so we really started focusing on cannabis and optimizing products for the cannabis space. And that's really where we've been hyper-focused, I'd say, for the last 4 years, and was wildly successful in growing that market and early adopters until COVID really put a crunch on new capital investments. So right now we're treading water, I think, with a lot of other companies and sort of waiting for COVID to settle and the investment capital to go back to full-blown activity. And in the meantime, we're spending a lot of time with fresh produce companies and governments that are really interested in food security. So it's been an interesting time as we've kind of wandered through COVID right now.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I was interested regarding the new product, the Atrium Automated Dosing Unit, was that it says that it could be used for automating or making autonomous indoor cultivation possible. Could you talk a little bit about that and maybe why that might be a good solution kind of in the current global climate?
Well, so all of the previous things we've had from the flowering and blooming and the leafy greens and lettuce focused products from the previous generations over the last 4 years, those were fully integrated products. So you plugged in water and power and you were totally operational. We found that as you move toward the greenhouse space, that the market expanded significantly because people didn't want to put in full aeroponic equipment, but they had the need for automation, they had the need for precision, for dosing, for nutrient management. And so we then just unbuckled our automated dosing system and the software controls and business management that we have in the system. We just disconnected those from the aeroponic equipment and set them up as a standalone platform. So the automated dosing unit that we released basically about a month ago is now a fully functional 8-output dual pump system that can put out 16 gallons per minute of any precision nutrient dosing recipe that a grower wants. And so now it's very adaptable to anybody that has a hydroponic drip line system or a floodplain kind of a system. So now it's really applicable to wide open greenhouse activities.
Okay.
So it's just opening a new market for what was just the precision aeroponics indoor sort of market, and now it's open to greenhouses. So it's a new opportunity. If you look at the global demand for fresh produce, it's supplied primarily from outdoor cultivation, so field cultivation. But about 10% of that output now is in fresh produce in greenhouse, or at least hoop kind of environments. Precision greenhouses is much, much smaller, probably 1% of that activity. And then as you go towards indoor fresh produce for leafy greens is really aimed at kind of the less than 1% early adopter space. So it's kind of a indoor farming moving to greenhouse farming to replace outdoor cultivation. So as it makes that migration, the ADU was a nice way to go after an open market for precision dosing and software controlled management for a greenhouse environment.
Okay. What has been the initial response since you released the product?
Well, with any early adopter system, you're introducing something new to a market that hasn't had it before.
Right.
And so aeroponics indoor, if you go back 4 years ago, everyone's question at the trade shows was, what is aeroponics? I don't even know what that is.
Hmm.
They were sort of loosely familiar with hydroponics, but everyone was growing in soil primarily. So it took time to sort of go through that adoption of introducing people to the subject of aeroponics indoors. To go to the greenhouse space, it's very similar. Precision hydroponics with software controlled dosing is a brand new thing to the industry. So we get the early adopters that are interested in a very high tech grow. Typically, it's a young person who's, it's almost gone generation skipping. So grandpa was the farmer that grew things. The son went off to the city to have a professional career, and the grandchild has gotten a degree in horticulture or biochemistry or something, and decides they want to go back and be a very professional farmer, but they want to do it with new technology. So we see a lot of people in that sort of transitional space that want to get back into indoor farming. But the idea of targeted marketing where I grow exactly what the audience wants in a particular location, it's kind of like the comparing the general field commercial farmer to your farmer's market that's in your neighborhood that comes into town and opens up on a street corner. Here we're talking about maybe growing on the street corner or in a greenhouse that's very close to an urban area, and then supplying the local market with exactly what the local market wants to eat. So that's kind of what the automated dosing is. Really more of a shift towards fresh produce than it is for cannabis. So cannabis is really an indoor market today. For premium cannabis, the medical cannabis precision that we talk about, and that market is very much what our integrated equipment goes after. So
Okay. Okay. You talk a lot about the software, and that's the Guardian Grow Manager, right?
the Guardian Grow Manager, yeah.
Right on.
So the Guardian Grow Manager is a great precision system. So it allows you to set a recipe, have a library of recipes, pull any recipe that you'd like. If you go in the cannabis space, you can pick a recipe optimized for a particular strain. You might start to tune that recipe to your genetics and the grow style that you like. We've had master cultivators that have gone from testing out different variants, and almost like fine wines, where you want to stress the grape just before harvest to get the tannins up. They found that they can stress the plants at different times to get the THC levels up. And so they end up with THC levels on a bundle basis being 5 to 8% higher than they've ever gotten before in their strains. Now, whether that's exactly the precision of aeroponics and just making photosynthesis work really well, or if it's this optimized tuning of the recipe, it's not quite proven yet. But the good thing is that it's a software tracked process. So you can know exactly how everything was done throughout the entire 8-week growth cycle, adjust your recipe along the way, and then do A/B testing side by side with two rows where you only change one variable and you find out which one does better. And then you
Mm,
do more of that in the next growth cycle.
right.
But to do that, you simply just reel back, load the software, boom, say go, and you're going to go through exactly the same growth cycle without hesitation. So deploying a recipe from room to room or grow to grow across two different physical locations is really straightforward. You know, you can run exactly the same process in either place. Research for going back to looking at how did my grow go, you really just go to the library in the cloud, pull down the log of exactly how that grow went, you know what the resulting yields were. And so now you can start predicting exactly what my yields are going to be 8 weeks from now.
Hmm.
So when you start the growth cycle, you have a very good confidence of what your yields are going to be and your profitability kicks. So having software controls gives you all of that precision and logging and data management. So that leads to really easy, good manufacturing processes certification. So GMP is really routine, and having procedures that you can document automatically are there. So then you kind of go to the other things that the Guardian Grow Manager does for you beyond just running the grow operation. It helps you manage the business with things like time cards and to-do lists and integrated workflow. So if you need someone to, mop the floors between rows 2 and 3 on a certain day, and you want it to be done with a certain amount of chemical mix to not pollute anything with your crop, you can have that very detailed specified to-do list in their calendar, and that operator is given that list. When they execute it, they log off exactly how much cleaner they used and when they did it, and now you've got a time card stamped activity. So there's no he said, she said about I did it, I didn't do it. So it's a very documented process, and that leads to your GMP and your tracking of, okay, what did I use within my facility for materials? Now, that's a very simple example, but you can see how you can build that into your workflow operations and managing your business. Then the kind of the last wave, so it's how do you grow, how do you manage your business? The last thing that the Guardian Grow Manager does for you is it allows you to build in your market pricing and do predictive modeling on what is likely to give you the highest profitability for your capacity. And then it starts to coach you on what should you plant next to get into that next profitable space. And so you're really doing capacity planning ahead of time of how do I maximize my profitability in the business. In the meantime, it's monitoring all the grows, it's tracking all the sensors. And if anything goes off scale, you've got this high and low testing that's always being done. Anything hits an alarm, it notifies you with a message first. And then if it keeps going past that alarm, so the water pressure is climbing, somebody failed to clean a water filter, you're notified ahead of time before that becomes a problem. If it becomes an alarm, then you start to escalate the notification. So the operator gets the first level of notification, the manager or the supervisor gets the next level, and then finally the general manager for the facility gets notified. So all of those things built in allows you to take it easy and just take a break. I was really thrilled that we literally shut down the facility in February, came back in June, and all we really had were much, much larger plants in our grow room.
Okay.
Right? There wasn't anything wrong. Everything operated 24/7. The lights went on and off. The water went on and off. The drainage systems all worked. So, that's really the only thing you have to do. At some point, you got to harvest the crops and replant something because you're done.
Right.
But the alarms along the way allow you to have that peace of mind that I want my weekends back. I don't want to have to be in the grow every day to make sure everything's working.
So, what has been the reception? You talked about how like it's a generational difference. What are you seeing from customers in terms of adoption with this type of technology and management software? You know, who's interested in it, who's asking questions, and who's sort of still hesitant?
Yeah, so I mean, we started at zero in 2016 and then got our first customers in and started working through that process and getting them to reorder in probably year 3 and kind of started that ramp. And we got up to 10 million in revenue in Q4 of last year. and we were 20% PBT profitable in that quarter. And as a startup, that was like, we're on our way. The ramp has happened, and we're going to be wildly successful. And then COVID happened, and so you put in all the brakes, and investment capital really dried up for our customers, and things went really quiet. And so, we're in that window of people beginning to come back to life there. From a maturity standpoint, the first year was, as I said, really educational. What is aeroponics? What's the value of that? It's so different than what I've been doing for 20 years. That step really requires someone who's ready to take a risk. It's running equipment with software and a network and communications, very different for a general a cannabis cultivator or a farmer. So that audience was really newer, more technology literate, more capable of picking up new activities. As I said, the kind of new farmers were, if you had somebody with a bachelor's degree in pharmacology out of a school, they could come right into to dive into it. So that was kind of that early adopter wave. What I'm pleased with now is that we're kind of in year 3 of that transition, and we're really starting to get people that recognize the business advantage. And so the large corporate entities that wouldn't take the risk with the early adoption early are now beginning to take that second look and saying, okay, we've been looking at you for a couple of years, and now, okay, you guys are still here. The metrics you've got are still off the charts. So comparing the way I've been doing it with aeroponics is night and day. So you've got companies like, in the meantime, Canopy Growth, Aurora Cannabis, these companies are losing $500 million, $1 billion a quarter, $1 billion loss.
Yeah.
They're producing cannabis in massive greenhouses at huge scale. And you'd say, well, it must be the lowest cost way to do it. They're not paying for the sun. But there's a lot of labor involved in that soil-based operation, and they haven't shaken that loose yet. So they may have people that are very experienced in growing, cultivating, but they're not looking at this new technology yet. And the difference is their cost per gram is between, their best reports have been like $2.50, $3 a gram for production costs when you fully load all their operations. In our case, the fully loaded production cost indoors is 30 cents a gram.
Oh, wow.
Outdoors, in a controlled environment greenhouse, we think we can get down to about 21, 22 cents a gram.
Wow.
So you're talking about a 10x delta in cost, in production cost, including all your expenses. So you've got a crop that's 80% gross margin profit out of every grow. So the payback is about 16 weeks. So people really go through that adoption curve, and there's sort of the disbelief window up front. It can't possibly be that good. Then it's sort of the engagement. Well, let's look at how those numbers really shake out. And then the evidence of early adopters that have already been in production for a year and a half, they're like, wow, that really is a fantastic operation. And so you get that sort of transitions. People learn, they engage, they check it out, the disbelief, they sort of see the success of people that are in that mode. And now you're in kind of a show me state. People really want to come in and see a showroom. They want to see cannabis plants and machines, and they want to see operations running, and they want to talk to previous growers and get the word of mouth of, is it really as good as they say it is? So we're in that kind of prove it to me state now. And the good thing is it all works. We've got fully UL certified systems, CE for Europe, shipping globally, production locations anywhere from South Africa to Macedonia to Israel to Denmark to it's about 100,000 square feet of canopy in North America, and a ton in the pipe. So the future looks great. I think our hockey stick was taken off until COVID. It's kind of flat. And now we're going to, I think, start to see that climb back up. So I'm really pleased at where we are. The future looks bright.
Okay. In speaking to some of those clients that you have, how are they navigating through the pandemic? How has the current situation affected their cultivation operations.
Yeah, well, so the biggest thing is the ones that are in production today, in an older technology, are treading water as fast as they can, and they're producing at that much higher cost per gram level. So their margin, it may cost them $500 to $600 a pound of production cost to produce a pound of bud. Now, what's nice for them is that the sales price for outdoors has still always hovered around 750, but the greenhouse has climbed to about 1,000, and out and indoor is kind of in the $1,400 to $1,600 per pound range in the very competitive states. So those are places like Oregon, Washington, Colorado. So they're making money. They're not making a mountainside of money, but they're kind of making a little bit of money. And I see them as looking at, can I move a room over a room at a time and start to convert to this new highly profitable area and kind of do it incrementally. The big corporate players have deep pockets, but as I said, they're recognizing enormous cash losses right now, and equity losses as they write down assets and close facilities. And you see another bankruptcy, or at least going into protection, every month. So companies are struggling. They're trying to make those ends meet, but the cannabis demand is stable and firm. So there is a market for their investment. And so I've sort of seen the investment capital business go from panic, not going to invest in anything for the first 6 months of the year, to the summertime. Okay, it looks like we might be able to continue to have an economy. And then, basically Q4 here, as we step into the fall and the winter, I see business investment capital returning and starting to come back into the cannabis space. Small players are still struggling for investment because when people had flush 401ks and everything was wild, they could get money that was kind of people's extra 10% that they would take on a risky investment like cannabis. And so that equity business is still challenged, but happening. It's kind of recovering now finally, but it's been quiet for 9 months. But the global food production space is kind of on the opposite side. Because of food security and the channel or the distribution network disruptions that happened around COVID, governments really became aware that they were dependent upon imports in a global food network, and that they couldn't guarantee they could feed their people with what they could produce domestically. And so they've immediately dove in with changes in investment. And that's really, I think, most visible to us in areas of the Middle East. And so places that have large amounts of cash, a great oil capital coming in, but worried about water security, food security. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Israel, Lebanon, the UAE, they're all coming in talking about massive scale farms. And so it's a completely different business for us. It's one that we're learning as we go. But because we've had a 10,000 square foot farm in Shanghai that's been doing a subscription business for about 4 years now. And that was our first proof of concept showroom. We built it at scale. It's got 7 rooms that grow different kinds of produce, from tomatoes, lettuce, cucumbers, eggplant, every kind of wok, stirred, fried lettuce, cabbage kind of thing you could think of. And those are all harvested daily, boxed, and delivered to someone's door based on a subscription model for the elite 1%ers in Shanghai. And so in that case, that primarily expat community really wants food security where they know there's 0 pesticides, 0 heavy metals, grown indoors, very pristine. It's all boxed inside a sealed clean room facility and delivered to your door fresh right off the vine. So if you wash it, you're probably polluting it more than if you just eat it.
Right.
Uh, and I'll tell you, you probably, if your mom or dad or whoever had a backyard victory garden, they were growing tomatoes and whatever's convenient in the summertime, and that tomato in the middle of winter has a higher value. So those windows become very attractive. But the real thing that I struck on was going through the grow, picking my lunch one day. I picked tomatoes, I picked cucumbers, some lettuce, and by picking, you just literally take it off the vine, put it on a plate, and sort of tear up the lettuce. And the aroma from the oils on the surface of the tomato was an experience that brought back memories of my childhood and growing tomatoes. And the thing is that when tomatoes go through the production process to get to the grocery store shelf, they've been rinsed and scrubbed, and all of that natural aroma and flavor is gone. And so the passion and euphoria that hits you when you finally bite into one of these things that's just so beautiful, is really startling. So it was quite an emotional experience to have this meal that literally had just a dab of dressing around it, not buried in it, and it was crisp, delicious. Anyway, so I think fresh produce has a good opportunity, and that's where governments have gone. And I think it's the same transition though. Field production will be most of it. As it's economically attractive, it'll shift to greenhouse activities for local to cities, and then you're trading off transportation versus really elite indoor farming that'll be in the city.
Yeah.
And, those are kind of transitions. I think it's a long, rambling answer to your question, but
no, I mean, just on the produce alone, the best carrot I've ever had is pulled directly from the soil. It's night and day. It's not even, you can't even, it's hard to compare. And I think sometimes when you get away from that sort of consumption, you don't realize what you're missing, I guess, in terms of the flavor.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something where the consumer side, just like the cultivator side, has to go through adoption of what is aeroponics, how does it fit with my business, is it economically attractive, do I get the same quality and superior product that I want? The consumer on the other side has to go through that re-education process. The difference between a vine to plate production process, where literally it's pulled right to your plate and it's so fresh, it's a very different experience than something that's genetically grown for transport. So it can be grown in California, stripped of all of its natural residues. It's got great shelf life in the truck. They travel across country to Wisconsin or elsewhere. So you can still have vegetables or produce, but it's not grown for taste and flavor and wild emotion. It's grown for effectiveness. So I think that adoption process of, is it really that much better, is something we're going through right now. And it's really kind of a taste test thing. You have to have at the shopping mall, if we ever have them again, people giving away, here's this and here's this, taste the two of them, see the difference. Or in the grocery store, you have to have that sort of adoption. And that's going to take time for consumers to recognize that difference. If you go to the cannabis space, the difference is this much more robust terpene case and CBD levels that are, much higher than ever been in those genetics. That effectiveness of aeroponics really comes through, so people get a superior quality product, and that then becomes flavor and preferences and taste. And so you get you'll have the robust nature of Northern California, where they want to grow in the Golden Triangle and say this is the only way to grow cannabis and get the best tasting bud, versus aeroponics. And I think my VP of sales has a great description analogy that kind of helps with the process. What we have today is a player piano for plants.
Mm-hmm.
And we can play chopsticks right now. We just sort of know how to play the tune, but we're not yet Chopin or Beethoven or the great works of science or works of art. But as we go through that learning process and do the testing and really, become robust musicians, we're going to have symphonies coming out of this machine, and it can produce anything at any time. And so that learning process is kind of what we're going through right now. So it's very exciting where this can go. So it's got legs that just go on forever of what you can do with leveraging aeroponic technology tuned with these sensors and softwares and automated mechanical systems to do anything you want.
Are your systems specifically best suited for the larger scale operations or the larger players, or is it possible for, like a startup to use this type of technology?
Well, certainly the technologies are no problem, and they can make any startup that's 1,000 square feet as efficient as a corporation that's got 100,000 square feet. So they can duel it out, right there. So it really is a very flat leverage scale to get into the capital and have it start producing at this 80% gross margin kind of level. But the footprint is not a home grower. It's not a personal grow system. I can't put 3 plants in a system and use it myself. I need, our smallest train is 4 feet wide by 25 feet long. So I need, 100 square feet to actually grow this. It's bigger than a carport. It's not a small scale kind of personal grow. I'm not going to stick it in my closet or in my bedroom or in a grow tent. So it is that kind of scale. The other thing that kind of leans toward larger corporate space is our nursery operations for cannabis. So we do our nursery activity in a 4-layer, it's called the Atrium 2.1 Smart Farm. But that 4-layer system allows us to do cloning and vegging in that stacked environment. And so today, oftentimes, a large grow operation will do vegging activity in a flower room, and they'll occupy that flower room for an extra week to veg the plants and let them get larger and bushier before they go into a full 12-12 cycle for flowering. In our case, we do all of that low productivity activity in a 4-layer stack system. We go 2 weeks on cloning, pinch off the tops, give them 2 weeks for vegging, and then we move directly to the next available flower room. And in the process of doing that, we're able to convert clone and veg space and shrink the footprint for mother plants so that your nursery operation is only about 10% of your grow operation instead of being 30 or 40% of your grow operation. So you literally get about 40% more flower capacity out of a grow footprint by using our nursery activities in a stacked environment. So that is a huge boost to the dollars per square foot profitability of a grow facility, let alone aeroponics. This is just operational efficiency of the grow room. So now you've got effectively 40% more flower space in your facility, and that's all producing profit dollars. So it's that nursery efficiency is really part of the whole aeroponic recipe that gives you these enormous advantages.
What is the span of size of customers that you work with? Did you say like you need like about a minimum of 1,000 square feet?
Yeah, to be happy.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so you can, as I said, the smallest system is 4 feet wide by 25 feet long, so 100 square feet.
Okay.
Is kind of the minimal thing, but it's more like you want a 200 square foot train, so twice that long, 50-foot long train, and you want to put 7 to 10 of those in a room. And so, that's one good sized room. A large scale facility would have 8 or 16 or 24 of those rooms to be in the sort of 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 square foot kind of a footprint. So those would be kind of like your good corporate grow facilities, and your typical license on the max size is usually around 22,000 square feet.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you expect a little bit of that investment capital to come back towards the end of this year. What are your expectations beyond that for the rest of this year and then looking into 2021?
Well, this year is, yeah, so it's been very quiet through Q1, Q2. It was really limited. Q3 finally recovered a little bit with a few orders. Q4 here looks like it's coming on nicely. So it's kind of a recovery window.
Okay.
So I feel like things are cresting back up, much healthier than they have been. The pipe, the things, the project scale that we're talking about with these governments are bigger than we've ever gone near. So 100,000 square feet is sort of the floor. From there up. So much larger scale facilities. But the timing is long. So those are government projects. So it may take 2 years for that project to get into full production. From the corporate cannabis side of things, I think the next big burst in the market's going to be in South Africa.
Okay.
So really in South Africa, we probably have about 20 customers that are already at the scale of our largest customers here in North America. So the potential is really great to come on big, but they're still in their own COVID lockdown. They've just released their first licenses literally the middle of October. So they're really just beginning their curve. And the difference is where we had to educate and adopt the market that was already growing in soil in North America and kind of had the Mendocino County sort of style of grow. In Canada, it was really sort of the canopy growth, Aurora cannabis land grab, and they were expanding as fast as they could to grow in soil. Those transitions were sort of the early things were in Colorado. The next generation was all Canada, and Canada was everything. And then Canada crashed and it had its market crash, and they're kind of just slowly recovering in Canada. But I think we kind of were, just learning when Colorado was hot. We were kind of really coming into the wave in Canada, and Canada collapsed. And I think we're ahead of the wave with all of that 4 years of experience for South Africa. And it's just coming online with the latest, greatest, newest technology. The grow operations I see going in there are absolutely GMP, state of the art, with the best technology, smartest PhDs working on them, doing great work. And the other place I've seen fantastic technology is in Israel. The grow operations there are absolutely pristine, and they're doing everything right. So, I think the global picture looks really good for advanced technology grows. And at some point, these large scale facilities that are producing cannabis at $2 a gram, thinking they're going to be competitive with these new upstarts that are coming in at 20 cents a gram. This is kind of like, the best analogy I've got is it's sort of like at one point in time, we had blacksmith shops and horse carriages and people were shoeing horses and doing great things to manage this network of transportation that was based on horse and buggies. Mm-hmm. And we had incredible blacksmiths that could do incredible work. And the automobile came along and really changed that whole network of support and infrastructure that made it all work. And really, we're kind of coming at that transportation business with the equivalent of a Tesla automobile. We're like lightning fast, totally electronic, all sensor and computer control based, do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. And it's a very different world. It's not the horse and buggy.
Right.
And so, there's a lot of blacksmiths that may not make that transition to sensor-based, software-controlled, managed architectures. And we'll see business failures in this process. And companies, I don't know how they get away with losing billions of dollars a quarter, but we've seen it all happen. The boom was great. The real estate boom was great. Watching them grow and if you got in early with the stock, you did really, really well. If you got in with Tilray, you saw a rocket from $20 a share to $250, $300 a share. Sorry about that.
That's a solid ringer.
Rocketed through that and took advantage of it, but you had to get out, and now
Right.
it's back down to like $15 a share. So, that's been a tough road to hoe if you were the wrong investor at the wrong time.
Now, you mentioned South Africa and Israel. What are you thinking in terms of the United States?
Yeah, so well, the North American market is we're all looking at the election.
Right.
If the Democrats win, cannabis will become much closer to legal across the country. If the Republicans win, it's likely that we'll be in 4 more years of stasis where things just don't happen, or they happen state by state in kind of this grinding process. But the number one thing we need across the country is a banking system. We need to be able to bank like a legal business.
Right.
The challenge today is our bank account. We're in the capital equipment and software business. We don't even touch the plant, and I've had my bank account closed twice.
Really?
So trying to do transactional business, it's better to be in a bank so everything's electronically traced and you know exactly where the funds went from point to point. So this idea of shifting everything to cash to make a huge investment, everything looks like it's money laundering.
Right.
And so it's crazy the way it's set up right now, and it's not safe. And I've had customers come in, review the system, look at everything. Fantastic. I want to buy it. How much is it? Well, the size scale you'd like to do is about $2 million. Okay, I'll bring it tomorrow. What? You can't do that. I'm sorry. I can't accept it. You have to
Yeah.
put it in a bank somewhere, and I can get it from the bank. And so that's a barrier that just holds everybody back. So banking is a challenge. It needs to be legal in general. And at that point, this industry will really start to help the economy and create jobs for the country. So that's kind of the thing. In the meantime, we'll go through this continued state by state market, opening a market, wild prices initially where people are getting $3,000-$4,000 a pound. As that market becomes more competitive and the regulations kick in and things go, it'll get down to the generic pricing of 1,500 pound indoors, $1,000 a pound in greenhouse, $700 a pound outdoors. And, that process will continue. So, it's a robust business. It's good. This is the early days. That adoption curve is just starting. And, as an industry, it's maybe 5, 6, 8 billion in North America today. And most of the projections are within 5 years, if it goes legal, 25, 30 billion. So great growth market opportunity, great investment opportunity. You just got to have a long tail window, and you have to hope the voting goes in the blue direction. And so we'll see.
Yeah, I know a lot of people in the industry are going to have their eyes on the election, as well as kind of hoping that banking regulations continue to progress as well.
Well, so the whole world is there, right? So California just by edict, I think, got through banking in California, but that's just at the legislative level. So then it's got to actually become a law, and the banks have to actually be willing to go with California law, not the federal law. Because the last thing a bank wants to do is be, challenged by Bill Barr about whatever they're doing on a state by state basis. So, anyway, so it's a tough business to be semi legal. That's the biggest barrier to growth. Fix that, get a banking system. If you're a company and you're building equipment, you have to invest in that equipment. And normally what you would do is you just take a loan against a backlog, and you'd be able to fund those deliverables and deliver to someone very competitively. And you might even hold inventory that you can take a loan against. And so you get the cash management for your business. It's typical. But in our case, we have to ask for payment up front for a portion of the investment. We then have to hold on to that for the time it takes us to make the equipment. So that adds delay to the growth cycle. And then I finally deliver the product and get paid after we stand it all up for someone. That timeline just stretches because I can't hold inventory in stock and deliver from the shelf. So it just slows down the whole economic growth model. So all of that can be much more aggressive, much more normal if we can just make the whole plant legal. And then we can get into universities researching it, figuring out what this magic plant can create from a pharmaceutical standpoint, and really get into all the benefits that can come from this plant. So there are just a wealth of good things that can happen to the world if we can make this plant legal.
I completely agree with you, Phil. Thank you very much for taking the time today. I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. Thanks so much. And I'm sorry I rambled a few times, but I'm passionate about this subject and happy to talk to you about it anytime.
Well, we have a lot of passionate readers and listeners, so I'm sure they're going to stay to the end.
Good. Well, appreciate your time. Thanks so much today.